On July 22nd, Prince George turns 13. And from the outside, it will probably look like the kind of birthday William and Catherine have always tried to give him: private, calm, family first, and carefully normal. But this one lands differently. This is not just another candle, another portrait, another summer milestone. It is his first birthday as a teenager, his last before the next school chapter takes over the headlines, and another quiet step toward a future he never chose but has been moving toward since the day he was born. The world met a baby on the steps of the Lindo Wing in 2013. What it is looking at now is the beginning of the next version of the future king. The story starts where royal stories always seem to start, on a hospital step with the whole world watching. George Alexander Louis was born on July 22, 2013, and by the next day the images had already become part of royal history. William carrying the car seat. Catherine smiling into a storm of cameras. The announcement on the easel outside Buckingham Palace. But what mattered more came a little later. When George was christened in October 2013 at the Chapel Royal, St. James's Palace, his parents chose 7 godparents drawn mostly from their close personal circle rather than turning the moment into a parade of dynastic power. It was one of the first signs that William and Catherine wanted to build something around their son that felt intimate before it felt institutional. That instinct shaped almost everything that came next. George's childhood has never been normal in the true sense of the word, because there is no normal version of being second in line to the throne. But it has clearly been designed to feel as close to ordinary as his parents could make it. The mood around him has always been noticeably different from the atmosphere that surrounded royal heirs of the past. Less palace glass case, more family routine. Less formal exposure, more controlled glimpses. William and Catherine have spent years trying to make sure George understands both parts of his life at once, that he is deeply unusual, and that he still has to grow up like a real boy inside that unusual life. That balancing act is probably the single biggest project of their marriage, even if they never say it that way out loud. Then came 2022, and that was the year everything shifted faster than anyone could fully hide. The family moved to Windsor. George started at Lamrock alongside Charlotte and Louis. And then, almost immediately, Queen Elizabeth II died at Balmoral. In the space of days, the 9-year-old who had been Prince George of Cambridge became Prince George of Wales and moved one step closer to the crown. That kind of change sounds ceremonial when people write it down. In reality, it is enormous. Titles changed. Expectations changed. The line of succession changed. And while the palace was focused on continuity, George was old enough to understand that something very large had happened to his family and to his future. The distance between royal child and future king suddenly got shorter. You can see that shortening in the way he has been introduced to public life since then. At his grandfather's coronation in 2023, George served as a page of honor, becoming the youngest future monarch to play an official part in a coronation. That was not just a sweet family moment. It was a message. He was no longer being kept entirely at the edges of history-making events. He was beginning to be seen inside them. Since then, the appearances have come in a careful rhythm. Football with William, major national commemorations, balcony moments, formal services, and selected public outings where he is visible but not overexposed. In May 2025, he joined William and Catherine at the VE Day 80 commemorations and even attended a tea party for veterans hosted by King Charles and Queen Camilla, a move widely read as another subtle step forward. But one of the biggest changes in George's life happened so quietly most people barely noticed it. When he turned 12 last year, a long-standing royal travel protocol reportedly came into play. The idea is simple and a little chilling. Direct heirs are not generally supposed to travel together once a certain age is reached, because the line of succession has to be protected. It is not some dramatic law carved in stone, and exceptions can be made with the monarch's permission, but the meaning is what matters. At 12, the institution begins to treat you less like a child and more like a contingency plan. William may still be able to travel with George on some journeys, but the principle itself is the point. It is the first moment when royal logistics stop pretending this is just family life and start reminding everyone that the crown is always keeping score. And yet, at the exact same time, William and Catherine have kept leaning hard in the opposite direction at home. In Prince William's unusually open conversation with Eugene Levy, he revealed that none of the children currently have phones and that the family is very strict about it. He also talked about how important dinner together is, how the children play sport, and how they are trying to give them security, openness, and routine, especially after Catherine's illness. Those details may sound small, but they tell you a lot. George is being raised not just to survive duty, but to stay connected to ordinary rhythms while carrying it. William described George as loving football and hockey. BBC's reading of that interview went even further, saying it showed an heir who wants a monarchy that is not suffocated by the past. That matters, because the future king is not just being prepared for the institution. He is being prepared by a father who clearly wants to change it. The biggest immediate decision hanging over George now is school. He is expected to finish at Lamrook in 2026, which means the next educational move is no longer some distant question. It is the question. And people are watching it so closely because the answer will say a lot about how William and Catherine see the next stage of his life. The two names most often mentioned are Eton College, William's old school, and Marlborough College, Catherine's former school. Eton offers tradition, security, proximity to Windsor, and a clear royal precedent. Marlborough suggests something more mixed, more modern, more aligned with Catherine's instincts. No official announcement has been made, but the speculation itself tells you how symbolic the choice has become. This is not just about where George studies. It is about whether his teenage years will lean more toward royal continuity or toward the broader version of adolescence his parents have worked so hard to preserve. And this is where William's own history starts to matter more than ever. Because William does not have to imagine what the wrong teenage environment can do to a royal boy. He lived it. He was a teenager during one of the most explosive periods of modern royal life. He watched his parents' marriage collapse in public. He saw his mother hounded by press attention that was personal, invasive, and constant. 2 years after turning 13, he lost her. So when people say William is overprotective or unusually deliberate with George, that is probably true. But it is not random. It is biography. He knows what it feels like when the institution and the media move too fast for a child to process. Everything about the Wales's parenting style suggests he is trying to make sure George reaches manhood with more emotional stability than he himself had at that age. That is why this 13th birthday feels bigger than birthdays usually do. George now sits in a strange middle space. He is still young enough to be seen laughing with his siblings and sitting beside his father at football matches. But he is also old enough that every public appearance is being scanned for signs of maturity, confidence, nerves, height, posture, resemblance, and readiness. He is a boy people talk about as if he is already a symbol, and maybe that is the hardest part of his life to understand from the outside. George does not get to grow in private and then reveal himself later. He is growing in installments, one carefully chosen public glimpse at a time. And maybe that is the simplest way to say what has changed in 13 years. The baby on the hospital step became a child his parents could still mostly shield. That child has now become a teenager the institution has started to count on. The cameras are more meaningful now. The milestones are heavier. The next school matters more. The travel rules are different. The appearances are more intentional. And the father guiding him through all of it is doing so with a very public awareness of what happens when royal childhood goes wrong. George's 13th birthday is not the moment he becomes a statesman, or a working royal, or anything quite that dramatic. But it is the moment the world has to admit he is no longer just the little boy in the shorts and blazer. He is entering the first chapter of his life that even his parents cannot keep entirely untouched by destiny. So when the new birthday portrait lands, and it will be studied the way royal portraits always are, remember what you are really looking at. Not just a future king, and not just a teenager. You are looking at the result of 13 years of careful construction. A boy raised between tradition and protection. Between public expectation and private tenderness. Between a 1,000-year institution and two parents trying, as much as they can, to slow it down. What happens next will not only shape George. It will tell us what kind of monarchy William and Catherine believe can survive after everything their own generation has lived through. And that is why this birthday matters far more than a cake, a portrait, or a headline ever could.